Now, Canadian police have carried out a violent raid on a Vancouver home of prominent pro-Palestinian activist Charlotte Cates. Now, police arrived at the location in an armored vehicle and full tactical gear. Witnesses said a stun grenade was used during the raid, and the windows at Charlotte's home were broken. Police took her into custody, but she was later released. The Canada Palestine Association has strongly condemned excessive police brutality. Cates is director of the Samidoun Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network. The network has been blacklisted in both Canada and the U.S. Cates is also previously detained and charged with hate speech offenses back in May. And she's featured extensively on international media, including right here on Press TV. Joining us out of Belfast is Fra Hughes, journalist, author, and activist. For more on the story, hello, Fra. Good to check in with you. Hope you're safe and doing well. Fra, Canadian government, so-called champions of free speech and human rights, once again suppressing voices that are trying to speak for oppressed Palestinians in the face of a genocide. Tell us how Cates' arrest and detainment makes any sense.
Well, obviously, it's an illusion that we're told that there's free speech in the West. You're allowed to speak freely so long as what you say chimes in with domestic and foreign policy by Western leaders. Charlotte is a perfect example of someone who is not only standing up for the prisoners and standing up against the genocide in Gaza, but she's actually a truth speaker. I see this attack on Charlotte not only as an attack on free speech, not only as an attack on people who are trying to tell the world what is really happening on the ground in Palestine and increasingly in Lebanon. This is an attack on the truth. And the mainstream media already self-censors. If you're employed by the BBC, if you're employed by Reuters, if you're employed by Fox News, they already have an editorial stance which is in support of the Israeli state and American and British and European foreign policy. So if they have a story that they want to tell, if they want to expose the truth, they know that it will not pass the censors within their media corporations. So they already self-censor. So it is the alternative media, it is social media, it is people like Charlotte who have the bravery and have the integrity and have the honesty to step forward and tell us what is really happening to the prisoners in Israeli jails, the people who are held without trial, the people who are held without charges, the people who are held under administrative detention, the prisoners that are raped, the children under over 14 who are treated as adults within the system, how they are systematically arrested in the West Bank and the occupied territories. They are given statements to sign. They're written in Hebrew. They are being deceived as to what it is they're signing. Sometimes they're being told it's a release form, and then all of a sudden they have confessed to some crime that they are not guilty of. And this is how children are being arrested and incarcerated within the apartheid state in Israel. But to treat a truth seeker and a truth speaker as a terrorist, to turn up with basically a SWAT team, to throw stun grenades at the property, to violently arrest Charlotte, this is a signal that is being sent by the state to everyone else. Mind what you say, mind what you do. If you come out into the public arena and you speak up for Palestinian rights and you expose the complicity of the Canadian government or the British government or the French government or the American government in their complicity in the genocide in Gaza, you can expect the full weight of the state to come down on you. Now, Craig Murray was a previous British ambassador to an Eastern European country. He has had to flee Britain and is now currently residing in Cyprus because he is frightened that he will be arrested for standing up for Palestinians, not because anything he said is wrong, not because it's not factual, not because it's not based in reality, but simply because it's the truth. And exposing Israeli war crimes and genocide is enough to have people who have a profile, people who have a certain amount of followers on social media, and people who have a certain integrity that we all respect, and people that we listen to, and people that sometimes we take our lead from are increasingly being brought before the courts. They're being charged, and then charges like the sword of Damocles are being held over their heads for several months or perhaps several years in order to silence their activity on behalf of, I'll say, not necessarily the Palestinians, but on the side of truth. It's the same if you stand up against the fascist regime in Kiev, if you speak out against America's proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. People like Richard Medhurst have been taken off airplanes. I believe Donald Coulter, an American citizen who works for RT, suffered a similar fate. We can go back to the likes of Edward Snowden, someone who told the truth to the American people instead of being lauded as a hero, as someone who exposed the deep state within the American administration. He had to flee to Russia.
And Fred, before we let you go, aside from Kate, even the group that she represents, the Sami Doon Palestinian Prisoners Solidarity Network, what part of their activities constitutes or warrants a blacklisting? I'm sure you follow Kate, her rhetoric. I don't know what she's ever said that even warrants to be listed as or classified as hate speech, but let alone, or aside from, regardless of what Kate's ordeal, her group, what have they done except call genocide? If you call genocide self-defense, it's okay. That's exactly what the regime and its Western corporate media allies want. But the second you call it the entity occupation, an occupying regime, use words like genocide, they come after you, don't they?
Yes, 100%. You're not allowed to tell the truth. Now, the Stand Prisoners Association, I had the honour of visiting their premises in Ramallah several years ago. They are there to stand up for the civil rights of the prisoners under detention and living under a brutal regime, which is starving, beating, torturing, raping, and in some cases torturing to death and murdering detainees. Now, this is all illegal under international law. It's probably illegal under Israeli law. We heard in the Knesset not that long ago that they were discussing whether or not the raping of Palestinian prisoners was morally acceptable under whatever immoral code that they used in the Knesset. I believe over 1 million Palestinians since 1948 have been detained, imprisoned, and many held without trial. 1 million people in a population of 7 million. That is 10% of the, or more, 12 or 13% of the population at different times have been detained. Many on more than one occasion. People held under administrative detention, which is de facto holding people in prison without charge, without trial, without the right to defend themselves if no charges are brought before them. These people are sometimes released, and as soon as they walk out the door, they are re-arrested under these draconian laws, which go back to the British mandate. These are Western imperialist laws that were used pre-1948 in order to subjugate, subdue, oppress the Palestinian people. And the Israelis thought, that's a good idea, we'll just keep using that so that we can put people in prison without having to prove that they've done anything wrong.
Thank you, Fra, for joining us and for your perspective there. Fra Hughes there, joining us out of Belfast.